That May night, when my stepfather appeared at my bedroom door with eyes gleaming like a cat in the dark, was when I discovered that hell can exist inside our own home, under the very roof meant to protect us. The pain of that moment still burns within me, even after nearly 70 years. Before I begin, I'd like to ask everyone to like this video and comment where you're watching this account of my life from. My name is Eleanor Johnson, and I'm 83 years old. The young folks around here in Riverdale, a small town in rural Pennsylvania, know me as the crochet grandma, the one who sells colorful doilies at the Sunday farmer's market and always has homemade apple butter saved for other people's grandchildren. If you look closely at my wrinkled face, you'll see an elderly lady with an easy smile, hands trembling with age, and eyes that carry stories few could bear to hear to the end. I was born in an era when women didn't have much of a voice, in a town so small it barely appeared on maps. Our house stood at the edge of town, almost touching the dirt road that led to the city. It was a simple wooden house with a small front porch, a vegetable garden in the back, and an enormous oak tree that every autumn exploded into such beautiful colors that people came from miles around just to see it and take pictures. My father, Robert, worked for the railroad. He was a good man of few words, who came home with the smell of smoke and rust impregnated in his clothes. I have few memories of him. The most vivid is of him lifting me onto his shoulders so I could touch the leaves of the oak tree. I must have been about 5 at the time. His laugh was strong, shook his chest, and made us laugh along, even without knowing why. One hot July afternoon, when the heat was cracking even the stones in the yard, 2 men from the railroad knocked on our door. Mama answered, and I could tell from her face that something had broken forever. Dad had fallen from a train car, hit his head, and didn't even make it alive to the hospital in the neighboring town. He was buried that same day in a simple wooden coffin that the company paid for out of appreciation for services rendered. Mama became disoriented, like a bird that flies into a window and becomes dizzy, not knowing where to fly. She stared into nothing, answered with incomplete words, forgot food on the stove. I was 7 years old, and my brother Tommy was only 4. We didn't really understand the magnitude of that pain. We only knew that Daddy had gone to heaven and that now it was just the 3 of us against the world. The months that followed were of hardship. The little money the company gave as compensation soon ran out. Mama started taking in washing, cleaning houses for the wealthier folks in town, selling cornbread at the church door on Sundays. Even so, the money was never enough. There were days when dinner was just thin grits with salt, and Mama would say she wasn't hungry, so there would be more for us. I began helping as best I could. I'd go along to the houses where she cleaned, learning to tidy up and take care of clothes. I had to grow up before my time. Tommy, poor thing, always had a deep cough that no herbal tea could cure. The town doctor said it was weakness in the lungs and prescribed an expensive syrup that we rarely could afford. It was during this time that Arnold entered our lives. He owned the general store where Mama bought on credit when we had food to eat. A tall man, about 40, a widower for several years, with no children. He started by offering an extra package of crackers, an extra handful of beans, sometimes forgiving part of the debt. Over time, he began showing up at our house in the evenings, always bringing some little thing for me and Tommy. Mama was awkward at first, embarrassed, but she soon got used to his visits. And how could she not? He brought not only food, but smiles to her face, which for so long had only known how to cry. "He's a good man, Eleanor," Mama would say as she brushed my hair before bed. "Taking care of us without having to. That's rare in this world." About 8 months after Daddy's death, on a Sunday afternoon after church, Mama and Mr. Arnold got married. It was a simple ceremony with only the closest neighbors and a few of his friends from the store. Mama wore a light blue dress that Mrs. Peterson, our neighbor, had lent her. She looked pretty, with her cheeks flushed in a way I hadn't remembered seeing in a long time. Mr. Arnold moved into our house that same day. He brought a suitcase of clothes, a battery-powered radio that was the biggest novelty for us, and promises of better days. In the first week, he fixed the roof that leaked in every corner when it rained, bought a new mattress for me and Tommy, who until then had been sleeping on a straw mat on the floor, and killed a fat chicken for Sunday dinner. It seemed like our luck had finally turned around. Things went well for almost a month. Mama smiled more, hummed as she washed clothes in the backyard tub. Tommy's cheeks gained color and his cough lessened with the syrup we could now afford. I returned to school, which I had abandoned to help Mama in other people's houses. But then, slowly, things began to change. First, it was small things. Mr. Arnold complaining about the food, saying it had no salt, that his mother made it much better. Then, criticizing the way Mama kept the house, that everything was too sloppy. Soon came the raised voice, the sideways glance when contradicted. One night, he came home late, smelling of moonshine. Mama, worried, had kept his dinner warm on the wood stove. When she went to serve it, he looked at the plate and threw everything on the floor. "This is pig food, not people food," he shouted, with a voice I had never heard before. That night, I heard Mama crying softly in their room, and some noises I couldn't understand. The next day, she appeared with a bruise on her arm, said she had hit the corner of the table. That's when our ordeal began. Mr. Arnold became another man, or maybe he had always been that man, and we just hadn't seen it clearly. He drank almost every day, spent the store's money on gambling and moonshine, and when he came home, any little thing was cause for shouting and breaking things. Mama became colorless again, thin, her eyes always on the ground, as if afraid to face the world. To disguise the bruises that appeared on her arms, her neck, sometimes her face, she made up stories of falls, of bumping into furniture, things nobody believed but nobody questioned. In those days, nobody interfered in husband and wife problems. And me, how did I fare in the midst of all this? Ah, my dears, that's where the story gets even sadder. Before I continue, I want to thank all of you watching this video. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Give me that support. Each comment is a comfort to my old heart that still aches with these memories. Give a like too, and subscribe to the Grandparents' Tales channel to follow the rest of this story that needs to be told. Sometimes, telling is the only medicine we have to heal old wounds. As I was saying, Mr. Arnold's arrival in our lives changed everything. Mama, who was already a woman suffering from the loss of Daddy, now lived in constant fear, walking on eggshells in her own home. Tommy, my little brother, would shrink whenever he heard our stepfather's footsteps approaching. And I, despite my few years, already understood that this man was not the protector we needed. The worst began on a May night, as I mentioned at the beginning. Mama had gone to help with the birth of Mrs. Wilson's daughter, who lived on the other side of town. She said she would be late, might even spend the night there, depending on how the labor went. Mr. Arnold arrived home earlier than usual, without the smell of moonshine, which was rare. He seemed almost in a good mood, even joked with Tommy, who laughed uncertainly. After dinner, which was unusually calm compared to what we were used to, he told Tommy to sleep in the back room, where we kept the tools and some old junk. "Today you're a man. You'll sleep separate from your sister," he said. Tommy, not really understanding, but happy to be called a man, obeyed without questioning. I remember having a knot in my stomach, a bad feeling I couldn't explain. I went to our room, now just mine, and lay down fully dressed, afraid to take off my clothes in that house that no longer felt like ours. I pretended to be asleep when I heard his footsteps down the hallway. The door opened slowly, creaking on those old hinges that were never properly oiled. In the dark, I could only see his silhouette standing in the doorway, large, frightening. I felt his smell approaching, a mixture of tobacco, sweat, and something that only later, much later, I understood was desire. A dirty, forbidden desire that no man should feel for an 8-year-old girl. "I know you're awake," he whispered, sitting on the edge of my bed. "Your stepfather came to say good night." His hands, rough from work in the store, began to pass over my face, my neck, going down to places that made me feel shame and fear. I closed my eyes tightly, praying all the prayers Mama had taught me, begging for some saint or angel to come save me. But no angel came that night, nor on the many nights that followed. "If you tell your mother, nobody will believe you," he would say, before leaving the room, adjusting his clothes. "And if they do believe, I'll say you asked for it, that you're a shameless girl, and then I'll send you all away, your mother, your sick brother, and you, You'll live under a bridge, go hungrier than you already have. Is that what you want? I swallowed the crying, the disgust, the pain. I learned to leave my own body on the nights he appeared. I pretended I was somewhere else, playing under the oak tree with Daddy still alive, or swimming in the creek with the other girls from school. It was as if I floated above that bed, watching everything happen to someone else, not to me. At school, I became increasingly quiet, more withdrawn. The teacher, Miss Margaret, even called Mama in to talk, concerned about my behavior. She was such a lively, participative girl, she said. Now she seems to always be far away, with her head in the clouds. Mama heard everything silently, promised to talk to me, but never did. I think she herself was too busy surviving her own hell to notice mine. The months dragged on. Each night was a lottery. Would he come? Would I be able to sleep in peace today? Sometimes, when Mama was home, he behaved, acted like a normal stepfather. Other times, not even her presence prevented it. He would make up excuses to call me outside, to the shed, or wait until she fell into a deep sleep, exhausted from the hard work. I started having problems that a girl that age shouldn't have. Pains I couldn't explain. Bleeding sometimes. I didn't tell anyone. I was dying of shame. I washed my clothes in secret, buried the rags I used to stop the bleeding in a corner of the yard, away from curious eyes. My only confidant was Molly, a patched-up rag doll that had been Mama's when she was little. At night, when I managed to be alone, I would tell her everything that was happening, cry hugging that soft body of rags, the only one that seemed to understand my pain without judging. Time passed, and with it, my childhood was gone, swallowed by that secret too heavy for a girl to carry. In place of the happy child I once was, grew a distrustful girl with eyes always lowered, who would shrink when someone raised their voice or made a more abrupt movement. And Mama, poor thing, so involved in her own survival, in enduring the punches and kicks, in maintaining some sort of normalcy so the neighbors wouldn't talk, didn't notice the silent hell happening under the same roof. Or perhaps, deep down, she suspected, but didn't want to see. Sometimes blindness is the last refuge of the desperate. Until one day, when I was almost 10 and that nightmare had already lasted almost 2 years, something happened that changed everything. Mama came home earlier from work, not feeling well. Mr. Arnold wasn't expecting this. He was in my room, doing what he always did when we heard the front door open. The panic in his eyes at that moment was the only satisfaction I had in all those years of suffering. For the first time, I saw fear in that face that had only shown me cruelty. "Stay quiet," he whispered, hurriedly fixing his clothes. "If you open your mouth, I'll kill you." But that day, by fate's work, or by the angels who finally decided to listen to me, Mama came straight to my room. Maybe she heard some noise, or maybe she just wanted to check if I was okay before lying down. When she opened the door and saw him coming away from me, adjusting his belt, something in her eyes changed. It was as if a blindfold had suddenly fallen. "What are you doing in her room?" Mama asked, her voice trembling, her hands clenched into fists. "Nothing, woman. I just came to see if she was sleeping right," he answered, trying to get past her. But Mama didn't move out of the way. For the first time since he had entered our lives, she didn't cower, didn't lower her eyes. "Eleanor," she called me, without taking her eyes off him. What was he doing here? It was as if a dam had burst inside me. All the words I had swallowed for so long, all the fear, all the pain, poured out at once. Between sobs and tears, I told everything. Absolutely everything. Mama's face changed as I spoke. I saw things pass through those eyes that I had never seen before. Anger, guilt, horror, disgust. When I finished, she was so pale, I thought she might faint right there. "You lying little devil!" shouted Mr. Arnold, advancing toward me. But Mama, that frail woman who I thought had no more strength or will to fight, threw herself in front of him. She took a push that made her fall, but got up again as if a new strength had been born within her. "Touch her again and I'll kill you in your sleep," she said, with a voice that didn't seem like hers. It was too calm, too cold. It was the first time I saw Mr. Arnold back down. That night, he slept in the living room, muttering that we were two crazy women, that nobody would believe us, that he would put us out on the street the next day. Mama locked the door of our room, pushed the dresser against it, and lay down with me on the bed, hugging me as she hadn't done in years. "Forgive me, daughter," she whispered in the dark, her tears wetting my hair. "Forgive me for not protecting you. But now it's over. I swear on your father's soul that it's over." I wanted to believe her, but I knew too well the power of that man, the fear he caused. "What if he sends us away, Mom? Where will we go? Tommy needs his medicine." "Shh," she did, stroking my hair. "Tomorrow is another day, and it will be a very different day, you'll see. Now sleep, my little one. Sleep, and I'm here watching over you." That night, for the first time in so long, I slept without nightmares, protected by my mother's embrace. I didn't know yet, but the next day truly would be very different. It would be the day when Mama and I would begin our revenge, a revenge that no one, least of all Mr. Arnold, could imagine. That night, after Mama discovered everything, I slept for the first time in almost 2 years without that knot in my stomach, without that fear that was my companion at all hours. I think it was just exhaustion, from crying so much, from finally having spoken what had been stuck in my throat for so long. I slept clinging to Mama, feeling her heart beating strongly against my back. I woke up with the first rays of sunlight coming through the cracks in the boards of the room. Mama was already up, dressed, her hair pulled back in a firm bun that she only wore on special days. She had a different expression on her face, a calmness I had never seen before. It wasn't the calmness of fear, of someone who lowers their head so as not to be hit more. It was something else, a calmness of someone who has made a decision and won't go back. "Get up, Eleanor," she said softly. "Go wash up and put on the blue dress, the one you wear to church. Today is an important day." I obeyed without asking questions. In those days, children didn't question adult orders, especially from their own mother. As I washed with the cold water from the basin, I heard noises in the kitchen. Mama seemed to be preparing a more elaborate breakfast than usual. The smell of strong coffee mixed with something sweet, maybe pancakes or cornbread. When I got to the kitchen, I was surprised. The table was set with the embroidered tablecloth that only came out when important visitors came, and there was a bit of everything: cornbread still steaming, fresh cheese that the neighbor had given as a gift the week before, even some slices of fried sausage that I didn't know we had at home. Mr. Arnold was already seated, looking confused by all that abundance. "What's all this, woman? Where did all this food come from?" he asked, suspicious, but already filling his plate. Mama gave a small smile, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's because today marks 2 years that you've been with us. It's a special date, isn't it? It deserves a special meal." He seemed surprised, but soon got excited by the idea of being the center of attention. He started eating heartily, talking with his mouth full about how good he had been to us, how we would be nothing without him, how we should be grateful for his kindness in supporting a widow and 2 brats who weren't even his. Tommy, who had just woken up and entered the kitchen rubbing his sleepy eyes, looked at everything in astonishment. Mama gestured for him to sit and eat without saying anything. "Eat up, Arnold," Mama said, filling his plate again. "I made this cornbread the way you like it, nice and sweet." As he ate, I noticed that Mama barely touched the food. She took a small sip of coffee, crumbled a piece of bread on her plate, but swallowed almost nothing. I couldn't eat either. My stomach was tied up, just looking at his face across the table, laughing and boasting as if nothing had happened the night before. After breakfast, Mama sent Tommy and me to the yard to take care of the chickens and water the garden. I was suspicious, didn't want to leave her alone with him, but she assured me with her eyes that everything was okay. Around mid-morning, Mr. Arnold started feeling sick. First, he complained of dizziness, of a strong stomachache. Then he started sweating cold, turning as pale as paper. "Must have been something I ate," he grumbled, running several times to the outhouse in the back. Mama, looking very concerned, prepared a strong mint tea for him. "This will help clear your stomach," she said, making him swallow it all. But instead of getting better, he got worse. He started vomiting, writhing in pain. "I think I need to call Dr. Walsh," Mama said, looking very distressed. "You don't look good." "No," he almost shouted. "No, doctor. This will pass. I've had this before. It's just an upset. The whole day went like this, with him getting worse gradually and Mama pretending concern, giving more teas, more homemade remedies that she prepared herself in the kitchen. Tommy and I were kept away, playing in the yard, but from time to time I would peek through the window and see him increasingly pale, more worn out, sweating a lot. When night came, he could barely stand up straight. Mama helped him lie down on their bed, put some damp cloths on his forehead to bring down the fever that had started. "Tomorrow, if you're not better, I'm going to call Dr. Walsh whether you want it or not," she said firmly. "I can't let the father of my children die like this." He tried to protest, but was already too weak. He lay there, moaning softly, while Mama made more tea in the kitchen. That night, after Tommy fell asleep, Mama called me to the yard. It was dark, only the faint light of the moon illuminating her face. I'll never forget how different she looked, as if she had aged and rejuvenated at the same time. "Daughter," she whispered, holding my hands in hers, "I need to tell you something, but first, I need you to promise me that you will never, ever tell this to anyone. Not even to Tommy when he grows up. Not even to your children if you ever have any. Not even on your deathbed. It's a secret between us. Just us." I promised. Of course I promised. What wouldn't I promise to this woman who had finally believed me, who had finally stood up against the monster who lived under our roof? "Your stepfather isn't going to get better," she said, her voice so low I could barely hear. "What he has isn't a disease that a doctor can cure." I didn't understand immediately. I was very young, still very innocent despite everything I had been through. "What do you mean, Mom? Remember that time the big rat appeared in the pantry and ate all our corn? Remember what your stepfather used to kill it?" Then I understood. He had used rat poison, a very strong poison that killed any animal that ate it instantly. It was a white powder, similar to sugar, that he kept well out of our reach. "Did you?" I began to ask, my eyes wide with shock. "Don't speak, daughter. The less you know, the better for you. I just need you to understand one thing. Tomorrow, when dawn breaks, your stepfather won't wake up anymore. And then we'll have to cry a lot. Pretend to be desperate. I'll tell the sheriff that he had been complaining of chest pains for a long time, that it must have been his heart. You and Tommy don't say anything. Just cry. Understand?" I nodded, unable to speak. A part of me was horrified by what Mama had done, or was doing. Another part, a darker part that I didn't even know existed within me, felt a relief so great it almost suffocated me. "He deserves it, daughter," Mama continued, as if guessing my thoughts. "For what he did to you, for what he did to me. None of us deserved to live in this hell, and there was no other way. If we ran away, he would come after us. If I reported him, who would believe me against him, the respected shopkeeper in town? If he went to jail, one day he would get out and come back for revenge. No, daughter, some weeds we have to pull out by the root." We went back inside the house. Mr. Arnold was in bed, yellower than a candle, breathing with difficulty. Mama sent me to sleep with Tommy in the back room. "Tomorrow will be a difficult day," she said, giving me a kiss on the forehead. "You'll need to be strong." And it was indeed a difficult day. We woke up to Mama's scream coming from her room. When we ran there, she was bent over Mr. Arnold's already stiff body, crying as I had never seen her cry before. She cried so convincingly that even I, who knew everything, doubted for a second. The neighbors came running with the noise. Soon, the house was full of people. Someone went to call the sheriff, another Dr. Walsh. The doctor arrived first, examined the body, and declared that it had been a massive heart attack. With his age and drinking the way he drank, he was a ticking time bomb, he told Mama, who continued crying inconsolably. The funeral was the next day. The whole town showed up, more out of curiosity than consideration. Mama, all in black, wouldn't stop crying. Tommy and I, also dressed in black with clothes borrowed from the neighbors, stood quietly beside her, not really knowing how to act. "He was a good man," the neighbors would say, patting Mama on the back. "He took care of you, as if you were his own. If they only knew. If they knew what happened inside that wooden house when the doors closed, when night fell. If they knew of the horrors those walls silently witnessed, of the tears that floor absorbed, perhaps they wouldn't be there, pretending respect for a man who deserved none." But nobody ever knew. Not the sheriff. who even asked some routine questions, but soon became convinced it had been a natural death. Not the pastor, who prayed for his soul as if it were that of a saint. Not even Tommy, who was too young to understand what was happening. After the funeral, we returned home, now just the three of us again. Mama, instead of seeming relieved, was even more downcast. That night, after Tommy fell asleep, she called me to sit on the front porch. "Eleanor," she said, her voice hoarse from crying pretend tears all day long, "what we did was a sin, a big sin. Maybe we'll go to hell for it." "But he deserved it, Mom," I answered, repeating what she herself had told me the night before. "For what he did to me, to you, he deserved it," she agreed, looking at the starry sky. "But it's not for us to do justice with our own hands. That's God's job." "Then why did you do it?" "Because sometimes we don't have a choice, daughter. Sometimes we do what we need to do to protect those we love. And I love you more than anything in this life, more than my own soul, which is now stained." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the crickets singing, the wind rustling the leaves of the oak tree, until Mama spoke again, her voice firmer. "But now, we need to move forward. No looking back. What's done is done. We'll work hard, rebuild our life, just the three of us. No one will ever hurt you again, daughter. Never again. This I promise on my mother's soul." And so we did. In the months that followed, Mama took control of the store. The men in town thought she wouldn't be able to handle it, that she would soon have to sell everything or find another husband. But she surprised them. She was intelligent, could do math better than many educated men, and soon the store was prospering even more. Tommy began to improve from his cough with the medicine we could now buy regularly. I started to smile again, to play with the other children at school, to sleep without nightmares. Gradually, Mr. Arnold's shadow disappeared from our house, from our hearts. But the secret remained locked away between Mama and me. An invisible bond uniting us, stronger than any other. On stormy nights, when the thunder made the walls of the house shake, I would cling to Mama and whisper, "It's just the noise of the sky, right, Mom? It's not him coming back, right?" "No, daughter," she would assure me, hugging me tight. "He will never come back. He's in a place from which nobody returns." And I believed it, because I had to believe it. Because the alternative was to live in fear for the rest of my life, and I had already had too much fear for a child. With time, we recovered. We made new friends, renovated the house, even bought a dairy cow that gave the fattest milk in the region. Mama became prettier, stronger. Her hair, which had started to turn white at the tips because of the suffering, went back to being black and shiny. Her smile, which had disappeared for so long, reappeared. Some men in town started to hover around, interested in the young widow who now owned a store. But Mama kept them all at a distance. "I've had enough men in this life," she would tell the gossipy neighbors. "Now, I just want to take care of my children and my business." And so she did. She never remarried, never let another man enter our house or our life. It was just the three of us against the world. And that was fine. Tommy grew up strong, became a handsome young man who helped in the store and dreamed of being a doctor one day. I, with time, healed inside. The wounds that Mr. Arnold had left on me, visible and invisible, healed little by little. Never completely, some scars we carry for the rest of our lives, but enough to move forward, to dream of a future that wasn't just about surviving today. At night sometimes, I would still wake up sweating, my heart racing, thinking I had heard his footsteps down the hallway. It would take a few seconds to remember that he wasn't there anymore, that he would never be again, that Mama had taken care of it in her own way, with that silent strength that I only came to understand many years later, when I myself became a mother. Because a mother's love, my dears, isn't just cuddles and lullabies. It's also claws and teeth. It's the capacity to do anything, even the unthinkable, to protect a child. That's what I learned in those terrible days in our wooden house, where the nights were too long and the days never brought enough relief. Until one night, finally, it did. The years passed after that night that forever changed the course of our lives. The town grew, the oak tree in the yard became even more majestic, and the three of us moved forward, carrying our secret like someone carrying a precious and dangerous stone at the same time, carefully, hidden from others' eyes, but always present. I was already 15 when Mama started coughing up blood. At first, she disguised it, quickly swallowed the handkerchief stained with red when she saw me looking, said it was just tiredness, that she had bitten her tongue by accident. But soon it became impossible to hide. She became so thin that dresses seemed to hang on a hanger. They were so loose. Her cheeks, once rosy with health, sank in, leaving the bones of her face protruding like those of a skull with skin. Dr. Walsh, now elderly, but still the only doctor in town, diagnosed advanced tuberculosis. She needs to go to the city for treatment, he said, with that face doctors make when the situation is serious, but they don't want to scare the patient. We don't have the resources here. But Mama refused. I can't leave the store. I can't leave my children, she argued, stubborn as always. What she didn't say, but I knew deep in my heart, was that she also didn't want to leave town for fear that, in her absence, the ghost of what we had done would come back to haunt us. It was a difficult few months. Mama, always so strong, gradually wasted away before our eyes. I took the reins of the house and helped in the store after school. Tommy, at 13, also did his part. We had employees, of course. The business had prospered, but Mama didn't trust anyone like she trusted us. One April afternoon, when the first autumn rains were beginning to fall, Mama called me to her room. She was lying down, paler than the sheets, her lips almost blue. She held my hand with a strength I didn't expect she still had. "Eleanor," she said, her voice no more than a whisper, "I need to tell you something before I go." "Don't talk like that, Mom," I replied, swallowing my tears. "You're not going anywhere. You're going to get better." She smiled, a sad smile that carried the weight of the world. "We both know that's not true, daughter. And that's okay. I've lived enough. I've seen you two grow up. I've done everything I needed to do." That pause, that look that faded for a second, told me she was thinking about that night, about that secret that united us and separated us from the rest of the world. "What do you want to tell me?" I asked, trying to push those thoughts away. She took a deep breath, a breath cut short by the cough that never gave her a break. "It's about your stepfather, about what happened that night." I froze. After so long, we rarely spoke openly about it. It was like a silent agreement between us. The past stayed in the past, buried with him. "That tea I gave him?" she began, and I almost covered her ears. I didn't want to hear the details. I didn't want to remember. "It wasn't just rat poison, daughter. In fact, there was barely any poison. It was too weak to kill." I didn't understand. If it wasn't the poison, what had caused his death? The confusion must have shown on my face, because Mama continued, her voice getting weaker. "I had another plan. I was going to make him very sick, but alive. I was going to force him to confess what he did to you in front of the sheriff, the pastor, whoever else needed to hear. I was going to run him out of town with the shame he deserved to carry. Then, how?" I began to ask, but the words died in my mouth when understanding began to form. "It was Dr. Walsh," Mama whispered. "When he arrived that morning, he pulled me aside. He said he saw the signs on your body, the bruises, the evidence of what had happened to you." I felt my face burn with shame. I had never imagined that anyone else knew, much less the old town doctor. But of course, he was a doctor. He knew how to identify the signs. "He asked me how long it had been going on," Mama continued. "When I told him, he turned livid with anger. He seemed like another man, not that calm old man we knew." "And you only acted now?" he asked me. I explained that I had just found out, that I had already started giving the poison, but that it would take time, that I wanted to make him suffer slowly. Mama paused, her breathing increasingly difficult. I moistened her lips with water, waited for her to recover a bit. The doctor examined him. He was semi-conscious, but alive. Strong as a bull, despite the poison. "This man will recover," he told me. "And when he recovers, he'll do worse things to your girl. I know the type." Then he took a syringe from his bag, filled it with something he wouldn't let me see. "Leave the room for 5 minutes, he ordered. "When you return, he will have suffered a heart attack. That's what I'll put on the death certificate." I was speechless. All these years, believing it had been Mama, that she had carried this terrible burden because of me. And now I discovered it had been Dr. Walsh, the man everyone in town respected, who went to church every Sunday, who had never been seen raising his voice to anyone. "Why did you let me think it was you?" I asked, tears now running freely down my face. "Because it was better that way," she answered, squeezing my hand with what seemed to be her last strength. It was a burden I could bear. And Dr. Walsh? He had a family, had his reputation. If anyone suspected, he did it for you, daughter, for all the girls your stepfather might hurt in the future. And the doctor never said anything? All these years? Never, Mama confirmed. Not even when I consulted him about the tuberculosis. He pretended nothing had happened. I think for him it was an act of justice, something he needed to do once in his life and then forget. We sat in silence for a while. The only sound in the room was her difficult breathing and the rain hitting the roof, making that noise that always reminded me of the night when it all began. "Why are you telling me this now, Mom?" I finally asked. "Because I don't want to die carrying this lie," she said. "And because I want you to understand something, daughter. The world is full of monsters, like your stepfather. But it's also full of good people, willing to do the right thing, like Dr. Walsh. We just need to have the courage to ask for help when we need it." That night, Mama got worse. Her fever rose so high that she was delirious, calling for my father, sometimes even for my stepfather, as if reliving old fights. We called Dr. Walsh, but he could do little besides giving morphine to ease the pain. I looked at him differently that night. He was no longer just the town doctor, the kind old man who gave candy to children after appointments. He was the man who had avenged my honor, who had ended my nightmare, who had done what the law itself wouldn't have had the courage to do. Mama died at dawn, holding my hand and Tommy's. Her last words were a request for forgiveness, not for the death of my stepfather, but for not having protected me earlier, for not having seen the signs when they were right in front of her. The funeral was large. The whole town attended. Mama was respected, beloved, the honest shopkeeper who had raised 2 children alone after the tragic death of her husband. No one, except me and Dr. Walsh, knew the complete truth about who she really was. A woman who had failed to protect her daughter, but who had done everything to correct her mistake. After the funeral, Dr. Walsh called me aside. He looked even older than the night before, as if my mother's death had stolen years of his life. "Your mother told you, didn't she?" he asked, without preamble. I nodded, unable to look him in the eye. "Don't feel bad about her, girl," he said, his voice tired. "She was a good woman who did the best she could. And as for me, well, I'm already old. If God wants to hold me accountable for that night, so be it. I don't regret it. Thank you," was all I could say. He nodded once, solemnly, and walked away. It was the last time we talked about it. With Mama's death, everything changed again. I was 15, Tommy 13. We were orphans, but the law said we were too young to take care of ourselves and a business. The judge from the neighboring county determined that we should live with a distant aunt in another town, and that the store should be sold. The money would be kept until we turned 21. It was like losing everything for the second time. First Dad, then Mama, and now our home, our livelihood, our history in the town where we had grown up. But I was no longer that frightened girl who hid under the bed. I had learned from Mama to fight for what was mine. On the eve of our departure, I visited Dr. Walsh at his home. He received me on the porch, surprised by my late-night visit. "Doctor," I began, my voice firmer than I expected. "You helped my family once, when we needed it most. Now I need help again." I explained my plan. We would stay in town, I would take care of the store with help from the most trusted employees, Tommy would continue in school. I just needed him, as a respected person in the community, to intervene with the judge, to guarantee that we were capable, that we didn't need the guardianship of distant relatives we didn't even know. Dr. Walsh looked at me for a long time. Those blue eyes faded by time studying me, as if seeing me for the first time. "You have your mother's strength," he finally said, "and her intelligence too, from what I can see. You're right. You don't need to leave here. This town is your home. That store is your legacy." The next day, he personally went to talk to the judge. I don't know exactly what he said, but it worked. The judge, a fat man with a not very friendly face, agreed to let us stay, as long as Dr. Walsh served as a kind of unofficial guardian, ensuring that we fulfilled our obligations at school and that the business didn't go bankrupt. And so began the third chapter of my life. I was no longer the innocent girl of childhood with my parents, nor the silent victim of my stepfather's abuse. I was a young woman, practically the mother of my younger brother, owner of a store that now depended on my decisions. It was difficult in the beginning. Some suppliers didn't want to negotiate with me because I was a woman and too young. Some older customers were suspicious that I didn't know how to calculate prices correctly. But with each obstacle, I heard Mama's voice in my head. Be strong, daughter. Show what you're made of. With time, I earned the respect that my work deserved. The store not only survived, but prospered in my hands. I installed the first cash register in town. We expanded the inventory. We even started supplying neighboring towns. Tommy, following in Mama's footsteps, had a natural talent for numbers and for dealing with people. And Dr. Walsh, true to his promise, supported us in everything. He came to dinner with us at least once a week, asked about school, about the business, gave advice when we asked, respected our space when we didn't ask. He became the father figure I never really had. Not in my real father, whom I barely remembered, nor in the monster who had been my stepfather. He was gentle as his manner suggested, but firm when necessary. And about that night, about what he had done for us, we never spoke again. It was as if it had been a dream or nightmare from another life. In town, the sharpest tongues whispered about our closeness. He's so old, she's so young, said some envious gossips. Is there something more there? But most knew it was a relationship of mutual respect, almost of grandfather and granddaughter. And even if it wasn't, after everything I had been through, I had learned not to care about gossip from idle people. The years went by. Tommy finished school with distinction and got a scholarship to study medicine in the city, fulfilling the dream he had never abandoned since he was little. I stayed, taking care of the store, the house, my life, that finally seemed to have found some peace. Sometimes, on the quietest nights, when the rain hit the roof, I still thought about him, the monster who had been my stepfather. Not with fear, not anymore, but with a kind of distant sadness for everything he had stolen from me. Childhood, innocence, trust in others. I also thought about Mama, about her silent strength, about her fierce love that had been capable of anything to protect me, even if too late. And I thought about Dr. Walsh, about that act of justice that no one would ever know about besides the two of us, about that syringe that had ended my nightmare and started a new life for me. That's how I learned that the world isn't black and white, that even the most unlikely people can hide terrible secrets or unbelievable acts of courage, and that sometimes, just sometimes, justice comes from the most unexpected hands. When I turned 21, many things had already changed in my life and in the small town where I grew up. The store had become a large grocery, with 2 female employees who helped me and a young man to make deliveries to the more distant houses. Dr. Walsh, our silent protector, had retired because of age. He was already past 70, but still attended some old patients at home. Tommy was in his 3rd year of medical school in the city, came back during vacations full of stories of the big city, of the professors, of the books he studied. Life went on at a quiet pace, in a balance I had never known before. At night, sitting on the front porch with a cup of tea, looking at the stars dotting the dark sky, sometimes I found myself thinking about how lucky I had been, after all. Despite everything I went through, I was whole, strong, with my own business, respected in town, not depending on any man. How many women my age could say the same in 1940? It was on one of these nights of contemplation that I heard knocks on the front door. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. A time when someone rarely appeared. I thought it might be an emergency, maybe a customer needing medicine for a child with a fever, or kerosene for a lamp that had run out. When I opened the door, I came face to face with a face I hadn't seen in almost 10 years. Theodore, Mr. Arnold's oldest son, my stepfather. It's hard to explain what I felt at that moment. It was as if time had suddenly gone back, as if all the ghosts I thought I had buried resurfaced all at once. I was paralyzed, my hand still on the doorknob, unable to speak or move. "You must be Eleanor," he said, taking off his hat in a gesture that seemed polite, but didn't match the hard, calculating look. "Daughter of Mrs. Sarah, who married my father." I swallowed hard, finally finding my voice. "Yes, I am. What do you want?" He smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes and that reminded me so much of his father's that I felt a shiver go up my spine. "May I come in? The conversation is long." Something told me not to let him, to send him away, to lock the door and pretend he never appeared. But I also knew that sooner or later we would have to have this conversation. Better that it be on my terms, in my house, where I felt safe. "Come in," I said, leaving the door open and returning to the living room, making sure to always stay near the exit, with enough space between us. Theodore entered, looking around with curiosity, evaluating the house that had once been his father's, now transformed by my taste. I had repainted the walls, replaced the old furniture with nicer ones, hung new curtains on the windows. Nothing reminded of the time when Mr. Arnold lived there, and that was intentional. "Nice house," he commented, sitting in the armchair without being invited, placing his hat on his lap. "Nice store, too. I passed by there this morning, but didn't see you. I was impressed by the size, by the amount of merchandise. My father left a good business for you all." I crossed my arms, still standing. "Your father didn't leave anything. The store was small when he died, barely enough to pay the bills. It was my mother who made it grow, and then me. With our work, our sweat." He gave a half smile, as if he found my indignation amusing. Of course. I didn't come to discuss that. I came because I heard my father died about 10 years ago, and I only just found out. I was out of state for a long time, in California. I came back recently. And what do you want from me?" He sighed, as if I were making a simple conversation unnecessarily difficult. "As his legitimate son, I want to know exactly how he died, the details, and also if he left any money, any inheritance." I felt my blood freeze in my veins. Theodore hadn't come by chance. Someone had said something, had raised suspicions after all these years. Or maybe it was just greed, the thought that he could get money from a woman alone who ran a prosperous business. "Your father died of a heart attack," I replied, keeping my voice firm. "Dr. Walsh certified it. It was sudden. And no, he didn't leave any money. The little he had barely covered the funeral." Theodore studied me for a while, his eyes narrowed, as if trying to read the truth behind my words. "Heart attack, huh? Funny. My father had a heart as strong as a bull, never had problems. And the store was already profitable at the time, I know that. People die, Mr. Theodore. Sometimes, suddenly, without warning. Your father drank a lot, was always stressed. And the store made little profit, barely paid the bills. If you want more details, you can talk to Dr. Walsh. He attended your father in his last moments." He got up, putting his hat back on his head. "I will talk to him. And to other people, too. You know, miss, when a man dies suddenly, leaving a young and beautiful widow like your mother was, people talk. And I've heard many interesting things since I arrived in town." My heart raced, but I kept my face impassive. "You heard gossip from people who have nothing to do. My mother was a decent woman who suffered a lot with the death of your father, so much that she fell ill a few years later and passed away too." "Oh, she died too?" he asked, raising his eyebrows in a surprise that didn't seem genuine. "What a pity. I would have liked to talk to her too." "If you have nothing else to say, it's getting late," I said, indicating the door. He walked slowly to the exit, but before leaving, turned one last time. "We haven't finished this conversation, Miss Eleanor. I'm sure you know more than you're saying. And I'm going to discover the truth about my father's death, even if I have to turn this town upside down." After he left, I locked the door with trembling hands and let myself slide to the floor, my heart pounding in my chest. After so many years, the past came to haunt me in the form of that man who had the same cold eyes as his father, the same cruel smile. That night, I didn't sleep. I was thinking about what to do, how to protect myself, how to protect Mama's memory, how to protect Dr. Walsh, who had risked everything to end our nightmare. If Theodore started asking questions around town, how long would it take before someone mentioned how scared I seemed at that time? how I had unexplainable marks on my body, how Mama had changed drastically after his death. The next morning, I went straight to Dr. Walsh's house. He was already sitting on the porch, as he always did on sunny mornings, reading his old newspaper, glasses on the tip of his nose. I told him everything, Theodore's visit, the veiled threats, the fear I was feeling. The doctor listened to me in silence, his wrinkled face more serious than ever. "This man is going to be a problem," he finally said, carefully folding the newspaper. "I know the type. He won't give up easily, especially if he thinks there's money involved. What are we going to do, doctor? If he keeps digging, asking around?" "Doctor." Walsh took off his glasses, cleaning the lenses with a handkerchief as he thought. "He suspects something, but he has no proof. The death certificate is in order. It was signed by me, a respected doctor. Exhumation after so much time wouldn't reveal anything useful anymore. What he has are just suspicions. But what if someone talks about the marks I had, about the way Mama changed after that night? Most people won't even remember that, and those who do will hesitate to talk. It was a different time. People didn't like to get involved in family matters." I nodded, trying to calm myself with those words, but the fear persisted. "Even so, doctor, he seemed determined. He said he's going to turn the town upside down." Dr. Walsh put a wrinkled hand over mine, in a paternal gesture that always comforted me. "Then we have to act first. We need to make him lose interest, make him leave here as quickly as possible." "How?" The doctor was silent for a while, looking past me, to the well-tended garden in front of the house. When he spoke again, his voice had a firmness I rarely heard. "He came after money, didn't he? So let's give him what he wants, an amount sufficient to make him go away and not come back." "But doctor, that money would be like admitting guilt, like saying we're buying his silence." "Not if we think it through, girl. I'll talk to him. I'll say your stepfather had a small insurance policy, that only now, with your mother deceased, can we release it to his son. I'll make it seem like an act of goodwill on our part, not a bribe." I wasn't convinced. I knew men like Theodore. He was of the same blood as his father. If he smelled weakness, he would attack with more force. And if he doesn't accept? If he wants more? Dr. Walsh smiled, a sad smile that carried the weight of many secrets. "Then we moved to Plan B. But let's try Plan A first. Trust me." And I did trust him. How could I not trust the man who had risked everything to save me? That same afternoon, Dr. Walsh went to look for Theodore at the boarding house where he was staying. I stayed at the store, restless, unable to concentrate on work, jumping every time the door opened, afraid it might be him again. It was already getting dark when Dr. Walsh appeared at the grocery. From his downcast face, I knew the news wasn't good. "He didn't accept," said the doctor, as soon as we were alone in the back of the store. "He said he suspects something was wrong with his father's death, and that a handful of money won't make him forget it. He said he's going to talk to the new sheriff, ask for an investigation." I felt the ground disappear from under my feet. The new sheriff had come from the city a few months ago, didn't know anyone in town, didn't have the same loyalties as the old one. If Theodore planted the seed of doubt in his head, and now, doctor? What are we going to do? "Now we go to Plan B," he replied, with a determination that didn't match his fragile old man appearance. "We'll use against him the same weapons he wants to use against us." "What do you mean?" Dr. Walsh came closer, lowering his voice even more. "Theodore is not a saint. Before leaving town many years ago, he was involved in shady business, illegal gambling, bootlegging during Prohibition. I'm sure that in California he continued on the same path. If we start asking the right questions to the right people, are you suggesting that we threaten him? That we blackmail him? I'm suggesting that we make him understand that he's not the only one who can dig up the past. That if he wants war, he'll have war. It's self-defense, Eleanor. We can't let him destroy everything we've built, tarnish your mother's memory, put my reputation at risk in my last years of life." I had never seen Dr. Walsh like that, so fierce, so determined. It was as if the calm and kind doctor had given way to a warrior ready for the final battle. "What can I do to help?" I asked, infected by that determination. "I need you to keep an eye on him, observe his movements in town, who he talks to. And I need you to write to your brother in the city. Tommy can find out who Theodore was hanging around with there, what kind of business he was doing. That's how our silent war against Theodore began. During the following weeks, each did their part. I discreetly observed his movements around town, noting who he talked to, where he went. Tommy wrote back with precious information. Theodore had been arrested twice in California, once for fraud, another for assault. He had debts with dangerous people, had fled from there precisely because of this. Dr. Walsh, in turn, used his contacts from a lifetime as the town doctor. He spoke to the sheriff before Theodore could do it, telling a carefully constructed version of the facts. That Theodore was an ungrateful son who had abandoned his father, who now returned only interested in the money from the store, which in fact belonged to my mother by right, since it had been built with her work. But Theodore didn't give up easily. He continued everywhere, asking questions, insinuating things. Some older people started to whisper, to remember that time, the changes in my mother after his death, my strange behavior as a girl. That's when Dr. Walsh decided it was time to use our most powerful weapon. He had discovered, through a former patient who now lived in the city, that Theodore was neck-deep in illegal betting in California, that he owed money to very dangerous people, and that he had fled to the countryside precisely to escape the collectors. One night, Dr. Walsh asked me to prepare a special dinner and invite Theodore. I was horrified at the idea of having him in my house again, but the doctor assured me it was necessary. "We'll do as your mother did once," he said, with a significant look that made me understand immediately. "A special dinner to show our goodwill." My blood froze. "Are you suggesting that—" "No, girl, of course not," he hastened to clarify. "We are not murderers, but we can use history to our advantage. The power of suggestion is sometimes more powerful than any poison." And so, with my heart in my hand, I prepared that dinner and sent the invitation to Theodore at the boarding house. To my surprise, he promptly accepted. That night, I put the same embroidered tablecloth that Mama had used so many years ago. I prepared a hearty dinner, roast chicken, rice, beans, and for dessert, a cornbread, the same she had made on that fateful morning. Theodore arrived punctually, dressed in his best suit, his hair combed back with brilliantine. He seemed pleased with himself, as if he had already won some battle I was unaware of. Dr. Walsh arrived shortly after, elegant in his old but well-preserved suit, bringing a bottle of wine. The dinner began tense, with superficial conversations about the weather, about how the town had changed. But soon, Theodore went straight to the point. "So, you invited me to dinner. Should I understand that you're ready to tell me the truth about my father's death?" Dr. Walsh smiled calmly, serving more wine for everyone. "The truth, Mr. Theodore, is exactly what's on the death certificate. Your father died of a heart attack. What we wanted to discuss is why you're so obstinate about digging up the past." Theodore gave a dry laugh. "I think you both know very well why. My father owned that store. When he died, it was worth much more than you admit. And there's something strange about this whole story. The way he died so suddenly, how his widow took control of everything. Your father beat my mother," I cut in, unable to contain myself anymore. "Beat her almost every day. He was a violent, cruel man. And as for the store, it was almost bankrupt when she took over. It was her work that made it prosper." Theodore looked at me with contempt. "Is that what she told you? And you believed it? My father was a hard man, yes, but honest. Hard-working. Built that store from nothing." "Your father was much more than a hard man," said Dr. Walsh, carefully placing his fork beside his plate. "He was sick, did things no decent man would do." Theodore narrowed his eyes. "What kind of things?" Dr. Walsh looked at me, as if asking permission. I nodded slightly. "Your father abused Eleanor, a girl of just 8 years old at the time, did horrible things to her, things no child should go through. Her mother discovered too late, when the damage was already done." Theodore's face turned red, then white. For a moment, I thought he was going to deny it, shout, accuse us of lying. But then something strange happened. He lowered his eyes, fixing them on the plate in front of him. "He did the same thing to me and my sister," he said, his voice so low I could barely hear. "That's why I ran away from home at 15. That's why I never came back." The silence that followed was dense, laden with old pain, with secrets finally revealed. I looked at Dr. Walsh, who seemed as surprised as I was. "Then why are you here?" I finally asked. "Why are you trying to dig all this up? Why threaten us?" Theodore raised his face, and I saw there were tears in his eyes. Genuine tears, not fake ones. "Because I need the money. I'm in trouble in California. I owe dangerous people. If I don't pay, I'm a dead man. I thought if I threatened you with an investigation, if I pretended I believed you had killed my father, you would give me money to go away." It was as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. He wasn't really interested in the truth. He didn't care about his father. He just wanted money to save his own skin. "How much do you owe?" asked Dr. Walsh, pragmatic as always. Theodore mentioned an amount that made me choke. It was a lot of money, more than we had available at the moment. "We don't have that much," I admitted. "The store is doing well, but we reinvest almost everything. To get that amount, I would have to sell part of the business or take out a big loan." Theodore looked devastated. "Then I'm lost. They gave me a month. 3 weeks have already passed." It was Dr. Walsh who found the solution. "I have savings," he said. "I have no children, no one to leave it to. I can lend half the amount. The other half, Eleanor can get with a smaller loan from the bank using the store as collateral." I looked at him, amazed at the generosity. "But doctor, you worked your whole life for that money. And what am I going to do with it at my age? Buy another suit to be buried in?" he joked, that kind smile returning to his face. "Besides, I see this as a way to finally close this chapter of our lives, to bury Arnold's ghost once and for all." At the end of that night, we had an agreement. We would give the money to Theodore in exchange for the promise that he would never return, never mention the suspicions about his father's death, never disturb our peace again. 3 days later, with the money in hand, he left town, returning to California to settle his debts. Before leaving, he came to say goodbye to me and Dr. Walsh. He was different, less arrogant, with a shadow in his eyes that I knew well. The shadow that remains when you carry secrets too heavy. "I'm sorry for what my father did to you," he said, seeming sincere for the first time since he had appeared at my door. "Nobody deserves to go through that." "Nobody? Neither do you," I replied, surprising myself with the compassion I felt for that man who, a few days ago, I considered an enemy. After he left, I could finally breathe in peace again. The past, which had threatened to resurface and destroy everything we had built, was going back to where it should be, in the past. That night, sitting on the porch with Dr. Walsh, looking at the stars as we had done so many times, I felt an immense gratitude for that man who had been more of a father to me than any other. "Thank you," I said simply, holding his wrinkled hand between mine. He smiled, that wise smile that had guided me for so many years. "The sweetest revenge, Eleanor, isn't made of poison or violence. It's made of peace, of a life well lived despite everything. You and your mother achieved that. You won." And I knew he was right. The sweetest revenge hadn't been my stepfather's death, but what came after. The life I managed to build, the business I made prosper, the person I became despite the scars. That was the true victory. That was the true revenge. The years pass more quickly when we get older. It seems that time, which used to drag like a snail on a rainy day, now runs like a river after a storm. I feel this every day when I look in the mirror and see this lady with white hair, hands wrinkled like crumpled bread paper, looking back at me with eyes that carry 83 years of stories. After Theodore left our lives, taking with him the last threats from the past, I could finally breathe in peace. The store, which became a grocery and then a small market, prospered even more. I expanded the business, built a warehouse in the back, hired more employees. In 1950, when the town started to grow with the arrival of the new highway, I was the first to have a commercial refrigerator to sell fresh meats and dairy products. People came from far away just to buy the cheese we kept refrigerated, something no one else had in those parts. Tommy graduated as a doctor with honors and returned to town. He opened a practice where Dr. Walsh's house used to be. Unfortunately, Dr. Walsh left us 3 months before my brother's graduation. It was a loss that hurt deeply, like losing a father for the second time. He passed away in his sleep, peacefully, without suffering. The night before, he had dinner with me, as he did every Friday. Before leaving, he held my hand longer than usual, as if he knew it was a farewell. "You did everything right, Eleanor," he said, with that kind smile that always calmed me. "Your mother would be proud." They found him the next morning, lying in bed as if he were sleeping, a book of poetry open on his chest. It was a life well lived, a serene death, the kind of end we all wish for, but few achieve. With Tommy's return, our small family was complete again. He brought with him a fiancée, Cecilia, a girl from a good family in New York, whom he had met during his medical residency. She was an educated woman, soft-spoken but with firm opinions, who soon won the respect of the town. She adapted well to life in the countryside, learned to make preserves with the older ladies, became involved in the church and the school. She was exactly what my brother needed, someone who understood his desire to help others, to make a difference. And me? Well, as the town gossips said, I was becoming an old maid. I was already past 30 and had no husband or children, something almost scandalous at that time when a woman was only considered complete when she had a ring on her finger and at least half a dozen children around her. But I didn't care about these comments. After what I had lived through in childhood, the idea of submitting to a man, of sharing my bed, my body, my intimacy with someone, caused me a discomfort I couldn't quite explain. Until fate, that joker who loves to surprise us, put August in my path. He came to town in 1952 to be the new teacher at the school. A calm man, almost 40, a widower, with no children. He had an awkward way with the practical things of life, but an intelligence that shone when he talked about literature, sciences, history. Soon the mothers of the students were charmed by him, not only for his pleasant appearance, with those blue eyes that always seemed to smile, but mainly for the dedication with which he taught. Our first meeting was at the market. He came in looking for specific things for an experiment he wanted to do with the students. He needed baking soda, vinegar, food coloring. I attended to him myself, curious about this new man in town who wanted such unusual materials. "It's to teach about chemical reactions," he explained, excited like a child. "The children will make miniature volcanoes. They'll love it." His enthusiasm was contagious. I ended up not only setting aside everything he needed, but also giving suggestions, telling him about materials I had seen in a catalog from New York that could be useful for other classes. Before we realized it, it was already getting dark, and we had spent hours talking right there at the market counter. After that day, he started coming frequently, sometimes to buy something, sometimes just to talk. He brought books he thought I would like, asked my opinion about the teaching methods he was testing, told me stories of the big city where he had been a teacher before. When people started commenting about us, I got scared. This wasn't what I had in mind. I wasn't ready for what others expected. I even avoided him for a few weeks, making up excuses when he appeared at the market. One day, he arrived with a package wrapped in brown paper. "A gift," he said, placing it on the counter. "If you don't want to open it now, I understand. But I wanted you to know that I respect your history, your time, your fears. I'm not in a hurry, and I have no expectations." I opened the package after he left. It was an old book of poetry by Emily Dickinson. Inside, a card written in careful handwriting, "For when you want to fly, without fear of falling." That gesture, so simple and at the same time so profound, broke something inside me. A barrier I didn't even know still existed. For the first time, I realized there could be a different kind of relationship, based not on possession or control, but on mutual respect, on friendship, on companionship. Our romance was slow, cautious, built with the patience of someone who has known haste and been disappointed. August never asked about my past, never demanded explanations for my moments of retreat, for the nightmares that sometimes still woke me in the middle of the night. When I finally told him everything, on a starry night as we walked around the town square, he just held my hand more firmly and continued walking in silence. He didn't offer cheap advice, didn't show pity or horror. He simply was there, by my side, a solid and comforting presence. We married on a Sunday in September 1954 in a simple ceremony in the town church. I was 37, he 42, an age when many had already given up on love, when people called us lost causes. But for us, It was just the beginning. We didn't have biological children. Maybe because of the scars I carried. Maybe because of the time it took us to find each other. But 2 years after the marriage, we welcomed into our home 2 orphaned sisters. Mary, 8 years old, and Louise, 6. Their mother had died in childbirth with a 3rd child, who also didn't survive. The father, desperate with the loss and unable to care for the girls, left them with an elderly aunt and disappeared. When the aunt also passed away, the little ones were left with no one. It was August who found them, crying at the school door on a rainy day. Nobody wanted to take in both. One mouth was already hard to feed, let alone 2. He brought them home that same night, soaked, with their few belongings wrapped in a burlap sack. "Just until we find a solution," he said, but deep down, we both already knew what that solution would be. The girls brought a joy to our house that I didn't even know was missing. Mary, serious and responsible as I had been at her age. Louise, mischievous and full of questions like Tommy. They soon became our daughters in everything except blood. And perhaps precisely because we didn't share the same blood, I was able to break the cycle of pain that had marked my own childhood. I raised my daughters with love, but without fear. With protection, but without suffocation. I taught them everything my mother didn't have time to teach me. To defend themselves, to recognize danger, to never, ever stay silent in the face of injustice, especially if that injustice was being committed against themselves. The years went by, the girls grew up, went to study in the city as they had dreamed. Mary became a teacher like her adoptive father. Louise followed into medicine like her Uncle Tommy. Both returned to town after graduating, determined to give back everything they had received. August and I grew old together, watching our small town transform, seeing the store that was once small turn into a chain with 3 branches in neighboring towns. We saw grandchildren arrive, 5 in all, 3 from Mary, 2 from Louise, and we filled them with love and stories. August left us 7 years ago at 85, after pneumonia that not even the care of his doctor brother-in-law could cure. He departed as he lived, peaceful, serene, thinking more of others than of himself. His last words were for me, "Thank you for teaching me to fly without fear of falling." Now, at 83, when I look back, I see a life that wasn't always easy, but that was worth every day. I see scars, yes, but also flowers that grew from those same wounds. I see losses, but also immeasurable gains. I see pain, but also a joy so deep that it sometimes still takes my breath away. Sitting here, on the porch of the house I now share with Mary and her family, watching my great-grandchildren playing in the same yard where I once played, under the oak tree that has survived us all, I think of the girl I was. That frightened child, hidden in the dark, carrying a secret too heavy for her small shoulders. I wish I could go back in time and hug her, tell her everything will be okay, that the pain will pass one day, that she will know true love, that she will have a family she loves, a job she's proud of, a full life despite everything. But since I can't do that, I do the second best thing. I tell my story. I tell it so that other girls and boys who are going through what I went through know they are not alone, that there is hope after the storm, that it's possible to rebuild life from the ashes, brick by brick, day by day. I also tell it so that the adults around these children are alert, as my mother wasn't for so long, so they see the signs, the changes in behavior, the fear in the eyes, and act before it's too late. And I tell it to remember that even in the worst situations, when everything seems lost, there can be a Dr. Walsh somewhere, someone willing to do whatever it takes to protect the innocent, to ensure justice is done, even in ways that the law books don't recognize. My story isn't pretty, isn't easy to hear, but it's true, it's honest, and maybe, just maybe, it can help someone who needs to hear exactly this today. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's not easy to listen to stories like mine, stories that speak of pain, of abuses, of injustices committed against the most defenseless. But by listening, you're already doing more than many did for me when I was a child. Please leave your comment down below. Tell me where you're watching this video from, what you felt when hearing my story. Each comment is like a virtual hug for this old lady here. Each message shows me that I'm not alone anymore with my ghosts. Give a like too. Share with someone you think needs to hear this. This story might be the extended hand that someone is desperately needing to save themselves. And subscribe to the Grandparents' Tales channel so you don't miss any of the stories we share here. Real stories of overcoming, of ordinary people who faced the extraordinary and survived to tell about it. Thank you for listening to me, for respecting my tears, my silences, my pain, and especially, thank you for helping me transform all this into something that maybe, just maybe, can make some difference in this world. God bless you and your family. And if you're going through difficult times now, remember, the darkest night also ends. The sun always rises again. I am living proof of that.